Good afternoon and good morning.
Hello, good afternoon, Rochelle. How are you
Uh,
today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I am doing fantastic.
Excellent. Will you please tell us your name?
Yes, my name is Mahama Nyankamawu.
Say it one more time.
Mahama Nyankamawu. People
Okay.
call me Mahama.
Okay. It freezed a little bit. That's why I asked you to say it again. Okay. And will you share a little bit about yourself, something to help us get to know you a little bit?
Yes, so I am from Ghana originally. I came here about 19 years ago to go to graduate school in Atlanta, Georgia. I love the South. And starting out as a chemical engineer after graduating from college, I never saw myself working in a career in inclusion and diversity. However, my lived experiences, serendipity, and the urgent needs of the moment, especially since the unfortunate death of Mr. Floyd, have
Yeah,
inspired me to continue to pursue this path. And
absolutely.
with hindsight, it all makes sense now because I've always been passionate about bringing people together. That is my mantra. Like before COVID, I held the best salsa dance parties in Palo Alto that brought together about 60 people, usually 50-50 gender ratio to make it work for dancing. I speak 6 languages. I have lived on 4 continents, and I'm really curious and fascinated by diverse cultures, right? One thing I've learned about myself through my different roles is that I thrive best in diverse and inclusive work environments.
Okay.
So that's just a little bit about me. In terms of my work experience, I have been an engineer. I've also been a founder of a social entrepreneurship company called Volta LLC, where we provide clean energy to rural communities in Ghana, clinics in particular, focused on the maternity wards to ensure safe delivery for women. I've also been Chief Diversity Officer and co-founder of Y Labs, which is a youth social entrepreneurship program that takes teenagers in high school and college through a curriculum of human-centered design and helps them to think about society's problems from an entrepreneurship perspective. Last summer, we did a program where we had 20 students in our cohort from 4 different countries. We had about 60% girls and 30% students of color. And we had them work together as teams to come up with really interesting solutions to problems. So as you can see, most of my work has been in either environmental engineering and social entrepreneurship. And the skills that I've acquired through them, like skills in organizational change, skills in data analysis, program management, strategic thinking, all of them have been transferable to my current role as a DEI executive and consultant. So I have a company now called Breakthrough Paths, where I lead a team of talented consultants, where we leverage research-based insights and strategies to support leaders in organizations to build effective DEI strategies that align with their mission. So it's a very custom solution that we provide to companies. And our whole thing is how do we leverage the diverse experiences of a team or an organization to achieve high employee engagement, peak productivity, and at the same time reduce the pitfalls of diversity, and some of them do exist. So I'll just end here, and if you have any follow-ups, we can talk about that.
And so I'm going to go back and start to ask you. So you speak 6 languages. What other languages?
Yes, so I speak English and Spanish, obviously. Then I speak Hausa, which is a language in both Nigeria and Ghana. I speak Chi, which is a language in both Ivory Coast and Ghana. I speak Dagbani, which is from where I grew up. I speak Gonja, which is from where I grew up. I also speak Mampuli, which is from where I grew up. So of the 6 languages, 4 of them are international, and then 2 of them are local Ghanaian languages.
Excellent. And I was reading something not too long ago. And so in African countries, typically race is not a construct. So people don't go as black or brown or African American or African, but more where you're this country or area where you're from. Is that correct? Do you actually subscribe to race?
Absolutely. So everyone is black. So that takes that out of the equation. But there is something else. So there's lots of tribes, right? So different tribes look at other tribes sometimes not in the most positive light, right?
Yeah.
And that's why that inspires some of the work that I do, because I realize that even where everybody is Black, there's lots of differences in geography, in tribe, in language, and there's still issues of diversity and inclusion that need to be worked out.
Mhm. Why do you think it is important to describe or label yourself as something? So why are you Black, or why are you African, or why are you African American or white or whatever it is? Why is it that we need those labels? Why do we need those?
I think it has to do, that's a great question, by the way. I think it has to do with wanting to belong to something, to identify with something, because people feel unmoored when they do not have anything that they can reference themselves to. So it's an inner need to be attached to something, to belong to something. Like in our evolutionary history, there's this us concept where we are comfortable cooperating with people who look like us. So we create in our identities who looks like us, who acts like us, who is safe, so that we can relate and cooperate with them. And then we put others in a different group. This is the them group. And we have to be careful about these people because these people may not be safe. And that has been so through millions of years of human evolution. And it's still there today. I think that's something that somehow our ancestors learned and we haven't unlearned yet.
So doesn't that also create the opportunity to discriminate and to polarize people based on those labels? So if I am a Black woman, you can subscribe characteristics to me. You can say I'm these things because I fit in this geographic and ethnic category, but maybe not. So is it not that when you attach a label or even the sense of belonging to a group, is that really for the benefit? Does that benefit us all to belong to a group?
Well, you're asking some deep existential questions. So yes, it does, and no, it doesn't, right? So here's how it does. Our brains optimize for energy and survival and safety, right? And we need to come up with shortcuts. If you have to analyze every human being you meet as an individual all through the day, you're going to run out of willpower, you're going to run out of energy. So what does the brain do? Daniel Kahneman calls it our system one thinking. We create categories, we create boxes, we create things that are shortcuts. These are prejudices and biases to save us from having to rethink each time we're in a new situation. Now, it's not always negative. Sometimes it's positive where I say, hey, when I'm driving my car, people who are coming at a certain speed are not going to hit me. I've made that shortcut. But if this guy is coming too fast, he's going to hit me. But think about it in terms of other people. Like in Africa, we evolved with tribes fighting and conquering each other. So I want to know when like 500 years ago in Africa, that this person is not going to attack my tribe. It's not that type of person. But this person is my tribe. So my survival is higher around this person than that person. And we haven't learned even today where labels may not be necessary to turn off that labeling. And you're right, it can actually be very harmful when we label people.
So using your theory there, so I'm an elephant and I can discern other elephants. So if I don't care whether they're from my part of the world or not, but if I'm an African elephant or an Indian elephant or whatever kind of elephant I am, I'm an elephant. So
Yeah.
why do I need to distinguish where, what, and how the other elephant is? Because he has almost all of the same issues as I am. He's probably, not a meat eater, he's probably not violent, he might be protective of his tribe and his family, but he's not necessarily my adversary because he has the same issues that I have.
I need to know that first, right? So if I am me and I'm trying to survive, I want to make sure that this other elephant is actually someone who's cooperative, that they're not going to steal the same resources that we all eat vegetables, right? And there's a limited resource of vegetables, whether real or imagined. So if we're in the same neighborhood, is this the kind of elephant who is going to take a little bit and give and let me have some? or is this the kind of elephant who is going to be greedy and eat everything by themselves? So from a survival perspective, it's important to make that judgment, because what our brains hate is uncertainty. But I have to say something too. Elephants together would not have as much of a big difference among themselves as if they come into contact with zebras, right? So they're more on guard against zebras than they will be against other elephants. But even then, with other elephants, they will still be like, I need to verify that I can trust this person or this elephant and be safe around them before I let myself go. And some of it is common sense, to be fair, and other parts of it would create discrimination.
But if I have been an elephant for thousands of years, I know what elephants are. And I'm equating human beings to elephants, not black people or white people or brown people, but I'm equating human beings to elephants. So this is a human being with the same mental capacity as you, with the same drive and all those things, depending on the range of it. Of course, not all of us are smart as others, not all of us are entrepreneurial as others, but we all have the same basic foundation, survival, being able to provide, being able to grow and to expand our universe and our minds. Why would I automatically assume that I met a human being that did not look like me? So let's just say the human being is a white male from Russia, or a brown male from India, or a brown male from Puerto Rico, wherever this human being is. Why would I assume that this human being is different from me and automatically, gear up my defenses to be somewhat on guard? Because doesn't that kind of defeat the process of human beings? I mean, to actually always be uncertain and unsure of the person that you're with, is it not a matter of waiting until the person proves themselves to be unfit or unworthy, or whatever the correct adverb is? But wouldn't we wait for that before we made some assumption about the person or about what they're capable of?
I completely agree with you. So it is that type of thing where what is the logical thing to do and what is the thing that we actually do, right? So from a neuroscience point of view, the prefrontal cortex is behind what we call the amygdala response. So your emotional system reacts to something that you have been exposed to, the stimulus, before you get a chance to think about it, right? So our first instinct is not always correct, but how did our instincts come about? Our instincts have been in us for a long time historically, right? So when someone says my gut is not to trust somebody who is of a different race, you say, okay, but is this gut correct? So here's what is happening. If you are the brain, would you rather protect yourself until someone proves themselves, or will you rather accept them until they disprove themselves? Which one is the safer thing to be?
I would answer it from the eyes of a child. Most children, before their parents and society has tinkered with them, don't have the instinct to distrust. They do not come innately with a desire to not trust or not believe, no matter what it is. So, the person that comes around and offer you a bag of candy to get in their car and go for a ride, we natively do not think danger. We don't natively think this person is going to harm me. We normally think that, I can trust this until you prove. The problem is, it's like, when you have created, as we have here in America, and I won't speak to any other country, but we have in America, we have defined people in categories. We segment people by things that we can see and things we believe, right? So for a lot of Black and brown populations, we are assumed to be less intelligent. We are assumed to be not on par as our white counterparts. And so when people define people by these things, so one of the words I really don't understand is people of color. We all are of color. So what people of color are we talking about? So are we talking about white people of color, Black people of color, brown people?
Exactly.
We're all of color. So what color? But when you allow yourself to get caught in that trap of my label, my hair. So I go in the course of a year, I may go from my afro to straight hair to braids any number of things because of how I'm feeling. But if you're going to assess some value to me, so I've got my afro, so I must be in my angry Black woman mood right now because I have an afro. That's the assumption made about the afro, right? Because these people are inherently violent that wear these hairdos. Well, none of that is correct. None of that is accurate. And if our brains are automatically telling us, hey, don't trust, don't trust, don't trust, this person might harm you. Wait, you got to find out what they're about. We would never make it far at all. We would never leave our homes. We would never have friends. We would never get married. We would never do anything that required us anything outside of our comfort zone that we can actually immediately define as safe. So so as a child, if you're not natively thinking fear, why is it that over time we develop this mindset that we need to distrust first and then wait and see?
So a lot of it is through our cultural conditioning, right? Like I've seen this happen actually, where you see a white parent with their kids in the neighborhood in the park playing, and the kid sometimes just wants to go play with the Black kids, and the parents to pull them back. So the experience this kid, this is just a very limited example, is having is that do not trust this other kid.
Right.
So there's that environmental inheritance where you are seeing that this person is safe, this person is not safe.
But that's conditional training. That's conditional cultural training, right? So we are absolutely creating that in that child's mind, and then that gets perpetuated as you get older. So when that child has children, it will do the same thing. So that's conditioning and cultural conditioning training to create that fear. It's not native to who we are. It is only over some kind of alteration of how we think that this becomes a fact.
So this is true. And so there's this professor at Harvard who's written his book. I don't remember the exact title, but he talks about how they have studies for 6-month-old babies, right, who have been shown different things in this type of implicit association tests. And even as early as 6 months, some babies have exhibited prejudice towards stuff. So in that case, it's difficult to say that the baby came with a blank slate, because why do they react in a certain way to certain kinds of people? Why do they show a fear response, right? So I think the balance is there, that some things are there that we have an instinct towards, and some things are there that are brought into us through our cultural conditioning. So the science is mixed on that, but you're right. I would say on balance, most of the things are culturally conditioned.
Right, but I will say, let me just say this one thing here. So there has been a lot of studies on Black people who came from Africa, and there's a lot of paperwork, especially written in 2010, back in that time, about the DNA and post-traumatic syndrome. Like, so there is a paper that was written that said most Black people have coded PTSD in their genes now because of 400 or 500 years of racial struggle. And so it's automatically that response exists in you. So, I don't know, how you process this, but like a lot of things are made that Black men are violent. They're just inherently violent and inherently sexual. That's just all that they are. Well, none of that is true, but I think that a lot of it is that we have taught ourselves that this is what this person is. It's like going to the grocery store, right? If you go to the grocery, you go to the same part of the grocery store every time. So you get your strawberries from this vendor, you get your bananas from this vendor, and so forth and so on, because this is what you know. It's not like this vendor is better than that vendor or whatever, but this is what you know. So when you inherently believe something to be a fact that is not a fact, is it a fact?
No, it's not. And I think you're getting to something really deep here, Rochelle. And the fact that you believe something false is going to guide the way you act and behave.
Exactly.
Right? So what you're saying in terms of just broadening out the horizon a little bit is, what can we do at the societal level to begin to teach people to have a worldview that is more inclusive? Instead of this worldview where when you watch your television, all the heroes are white and all the villains are Russians or Blacks, right? If you grew up watching these movies, what kind of conditioning are you growing up with?
So I think that I'll tell you. So I grew up watching a cartoon with a Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and a few the pig, and I can't remember all those names on it, but I grew up watching all those things. And so a lot of people talk about the violence of video games, right? So kids who watch a lot of video games and play a lot of video games are likely to be more violent. There is nothing more violent than Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and the pig, and all these other people in these cartoons. And these were animated things where they would kill the duck, kill the dog, kill whatever it is, and a second later be right back. And that was in our mind because that was really all on the television all the time. If you watch cartoons, if you were a kid, was constantly this regurgitation of Bugs Bunny. And Bugs Bunny is the good person, right? And the coyote is the bad person. So that's the story.
I've seen that.
They
I love
told. That's the story they told over and over again, right? So no matter who you are in life, if you've been in America and watched any cartoons, your first thought is that rabbits are better than coyotes. Just inherently, rabbits are better than coyotes because all rabbits do is they're good. You know, they eat carrots, they reproduce, but that's all they do. There's not a bad thing in a rabbit. But the coyote, he kills and destroys and maims and all that stuff right there. When you are constantly fed that, how can you think anything else, right? So I always question how we are being manipulated and changed in our minds. So we go back to those kids in your friend's study in Harvard, right? So there's just as many studies that destroy his theory as well, his hypothesis as well. But the problem is that there is no one size fits all to race, ethnicity, and other constructs. There is not. You can't go and say all Black people are this, or all white people are this, or all, these people are this. So, we experienced over the last 4 years where, we heard we were going to close the borders because they're rapists and murderers, and, and all these things that were labeled to people coming into our country from Hispanic or Latin countries, right? There is no such thing as all. And I hate ubiquitous or words that encompass everything and say, hey, here's the fact about that. And I don't think that there's anything in our world that we can say definitively is exactly this. So I don't know you very well, but I know quite a few Africans from Ghana, from Nigeria, from various parts, Liberia, all these, and I cannot say all Africans are the same. So how in the world could I ever get to a place where I could say all Black people are this or all white people are this? The people that I have met, each one has a different perspective that they bring. And none of them are exactly the same. They might have the same experience. They may speak a bunch of languages. They may have gone to school. They may have an entrepreneurial bent, but they may not be all in this one category that I can say, this is what I can say about all Africans, or this is what I can say about all Black people. How do you make that statement? How do you get to a place where you can say a generic, ubiquitous, encompassing statement that all things are X? What things are X? Maybe one thing is X, maybe two things, maybe even if you had 10, maybe you could create a statistic that says of 10 people, 3 are X. That's great. You could say that. If you found your research and it said that, great, that's great. But you cannot say all 10 are H. So my other thing, and I'll be quiet in just a minute. So there's this theory that all Black people have brown eyes. That's not a fact. But everywhere you go, there's an assumption that all Black people have brown eyes. How? When you have a gene pool that's thousands of years old, it evolves as it grows and it expands and narrows. How can it be that there is such a statement as that? So any statement that we make that is inclusive must be exploited for its value.
I am with you on that. And I give you a short story about myself, and it's in the article that I'm going to publish. Like just growing up in Ghana, right? I grew up in the poorest part of Ghana. I worked hard and I got the opportunity to go to school in the wealthy part of Ghana. And even though we're all Black, people still would say and be microaggressive towards me because of the region that I came from. Right. Because in their minds, a lot of them, not all of them, obviously, someone from my part of the country, the northern part, is backward, it's not well-read, right?
Right.
And I've seen that. So I lived in Peru as well, in South America. And in the Plaza de Armas, which is like the downtown of
Yeah.
Cusco, people will stop me and take pictures with me because they didn't see a lot of Black people, right? So some of these things are not absolutely true, but like Aristotle says, there's a golden mean. So they're average stereotypes. It doesn't mean they're correct, right? But people want shortcuts so that especially if you're tired. So think about it. If I'm stressed out or I'm tired, my prejudices are going to be much higher than if I am a little bit more reflective. Why? I have imbibed things from my culture, from TV, from my own, you know, prejudices that say, look, this is the shortcut for this type of people. Is it correct? No, it's not. Individuals have to be judged on their merit, right? Individuals have to be judged on what value that they bring, not based on some created thing that this person is like that. Some of the biggest allies that we have in our work are white men, right? And some of the people who are not open to DEI work are Black men. So it's very difficult to just, I don't believe in generalizing. And like you said about this research goes in different directions. It depends on which one that you pick. And we have to be very careful what we pick and not necessarily say that this is how things should be, right? It's good to look at the preponderance of evidence and say, well, in a major way, which direction is the wind blowing? But we have to be humble about what we claim to know, is what I would say.
So in research, I would just say, most of us research. So when I was getting my doctorate degree, I picked a hypothesis and I weighed the hypothesis against all kinds of other things. And so my question was, am I trying to answer my hypothesis? And if I am the person who created my research question, I'm almost always trying to have it come out to the results that I want it to have. Right. So I want the mean, the mode, the standard deviation, all to bring back my result. Right. So if I believe that today is Tuesday, and I've hypothesized that if today is Tuesday, it is these things here, these are the facts that say this must be Tuesday, my data is almost going to prove what I've said is true, that today is Tuesday. And so one of the things about research, we always say, it must be valid, right? It must be repeatable, right? You must be able to redo it all the time. But what we bring as human beings to our work is our own views about things. So how much of it is actually clear research and results based on what it is that we're trying to prove. So if you're trying to disprove, I think if you're trying to disprove a hypothesis, you are more better than you are trying to prove it, because you can always prove it, right? Because there's so many books that says statistics and damn lies, because you can make a statistic say anything you want to say, that all the men in this part of Durham are 10 foot tall and all over there is 3 foot tall. It just depends on what it is. But I think that when you get into human constructs, so whether it's your physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is that we're doing, we must remember that we cannot assume a fact that we don't know to be a fact. Just because you said preponderance of evidence, let's just say that 10% of all white girls in middle school will take an AP class, a gifted class. We made that's our hypothesis, that 10% will. What facts are we basing that on? So how well did they do in elementary education? I mean, so first through 5th or 6th grade. Are we basing that on the fact that it's a white girl, a white person as a girl? What facts are we deciding that this is a fact of? So I think that we have to be very careful that we do not bring the answer to the problem. And so what I find and so I hate the word diversity. I hate the word equity, and I hate inclusion, because how do you define any of those words? So what's diverse to you? And I often ask people this: how do you define diversity? And many people say Black and brown people. That's not diversity. That's just putting a little bit of coloring on the problem. What is diversity? So how do you define diversity? So each organization, each individual has their own version of what this means. And there are very few rigid definitions of DEI, right? So that says this must be the case, this must be the case, and this must be the case. So when you go to destruct some of the issues that exist in these constructs, we're often faced with bringing our own baggage to the problem, right? So we're bringing
Yeah.
our own issues to the problem. So as a Black woman, here's my experiences in my career. And so I'm bringing that to my problem. So if I try to define diversity for the whole world, I'm only looking at it through this little narrow window right here, because all I have is the experiences I've had in this area of work, in this area of education, in this area of experience. And so I'm trying to define something this big that's only this big, and I'm bringing that much. So you need to have diverse people, if you will. And what I mean diverse, like different people thinking about this issue, and you all coming together and maybe putting forth a hypothesis that says, this is what diversity can be, or maybe should be, but this is what we know it is. So you have your null and your true hypothesis. So is it or is it not? And so in the work that you do and the work that I do, I think we as experts and consultants bring baggage to the problem that may not exist or others may not see, right? So why has this problem persisted for so long? Why are we in the 21st century and racism is still a problem? Sexism is still a problem. Ageism is still a problem, because we do not want to fix it. It works for us. It goes back to what you said in the beginning. We know to be a little bit skeptical of things we're not fully comfortable with. So there's that. So we bring these things. Why would I want to change this? I'm the white man in power. Why would I want to share my power with you and whoever you is? But I don't know the answer to that question. So, we have to be careful to make sure that when we're dissecting these things, we're doing it from the lens that's not just our own beliefs and feelings about things.
So how might we do that though? Because you got me really curious, because what you're saying is actually true. And I actually posted something on LinkedIn today around that. Like, for somebody who is in a position of privilege, equality sounds like oppression.
Right.
So what do you do in a situation like that? How do you make it work for different contexts? That's what I am curious about in my work, because everyone sees things differently.
Right. I think that you have to think about this from the world of philanthropy. I cannot even speak that, but you have to think about this from the lens of charity, right? So if I made $1 billion, and we can use Warren Buffett, he's got $1 billion, and his whole plan is to give away his money. He's intentionally giving away his money, and he's actually come out and said he's not going to leave his kids his fortune. He's going to leave them stuff, but not preponderance of his money. Why? Because some of us have to believe that the human condition belongs to all of us, not to some of us. So if you are a billionaire and I say to you, hey, I want to do X, or I'm in this problem right here, your kindness must step up and say, yep, that's the right thing to do. The problem is we're not comfortable with our kindness, because we have, again, these learned experiences that it rains and sunshines, right? So there's time. If I have my $1 billion and I've given it all to you, and then the world goes bankrupt, we have a great recession, I don't have anything to get started again. So I may need to hold on to what I have. So first of all, you really have to start with a space of kindness. And then you must believe in yourself. This is where we encounter the problem, right? Because if you don't believe in you, you don't believe you can make that $1 billion back. So you're hesitant about giving it away, right? So
you're holding on to it.
You're holding on so tight, right? So this is a issue of person, not an issue of a society, but we inherently expect what you are going back to your original theory, right? So we think always we have got to be on my guard. I got to be careful. We put tons of money in savings. We buy this, we buy stocks, we do all these things to perpetuate our financial position, because we are uncertain that I can go back and do all this work again, or the work was so hard to do, I don't want to do it again. So, I may not get $1 billion the next time. So this is one of those things where you have to do a little bit of introspection and look inside yourself and say, okay, so as I understand it, I have done X, Y, and Z. And we can use you as example. You learn to speak 6 languages. You're a world traveler. You've done all these things. Would you do all of that again? So what it took for you to learn 6 languages, so 2 of them are native to you, but the other 4 you learned. What would it take for you to learn 6 more? So German, Mandarin, Russian, to learn 4 more languages. how hard it was at the other four. So you may say, well, I'm gonna be good with six. I got six languages. I don't need to learn anymore. And it's the same way we see money, right? So I'm going to stick with what I have. So my $1 billion, I'm going to give you 1% of my $1 billion, and I'm going to hold on to the rest because I don't know what's going to happen. But the problem with that is that it's that old religious parable. You've never seen a U-Haul truck following a hearse to heaven or hell. You leave it behind. So if you don't decimate it, and give it to others, you end up holding on to it, and then it does you no good because now you're in that box, or they burn you up, or whatever they're doing to you, and everything that you acquired on earth is still on earth, and you're not. So if you create a mind of giving and kindness to others, power is easy to give away because you can get it back. If you were able to assimilate all of these things in your wheelhouse, you could do it again. But if you don't believe in you cannot. So you must hold on to it.
I love what you said, and I love both parts, especially the first part on kindness. Even the Bible says that the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. Just looking at it that way.
Absolutely.
If we were kind to ourselves and to other people, we would not feel like we have to hold on to the little that we have and let other people who are suffering continue to suffer. Like I live here in the Bay, lots of people have money, but there's lots of poverty around as well. Yep. And you're like, okay, how does that make sense? The human condition is an interesting one. It's dynamic, it's complex. So I say this to people. I've lived here for 19 years, right? And I say this to people all the time. I cannot associate anything that has happened to me to racism against me as a person. I see racism around. I know it exists. My friends have experienced it, but not me. How is that possible? And I say it's not because I've done anything different. I see that there are all kinds of evil in the world. Okay, all kinds of evil. And I've experienced evil in my own country where race is not even a factor. So what we need to do is to learn to love one another. And the whole issue of sexism and racism and all kinds of isms would go away, right? Because they're all bad. Right. So I come at it from that lens of how can I be conscious of my own biases? And I tell you something, when I moved to the US, I was not the kind of person who was open to people who were gay, because in my culture, it's very conservative. Until I made friends who were gay and lesbian and I started hanging out with them, that's actually that contact, that engagement is what helped me to get rid of my own biases. But if you had asked me then, I'll say I'm a good person, but I also believe that gay people should be imprisoned, like most people where I grew up believed it. So sometimes it's about also contact, because people alone do not easily change. Sometimes we need other people around us, like you said, bring different dimensions into our worlds, right? So that we can all together, through our own weaknesses and strengths, build a more beautiful world.
Absolutely. And I would say this, in the grand scheme of who we are as people, we must be willing to accept rewiring, right? So you were talking about the brain and how the brain has all these things that it is packed into its space about what these things are. So if you look at a white door, you might make some assumptions about a door. Or if you look at a blue sky, you may make some, but you have to be open to having your mind rewired and be accepting of what the rewiring means. So what you said about gay people. So, I think that is probably probably a more broader view than you would think, that there are a lot of people who narrowly paint gay people into this category and make these assumptions about them, which is not a fact, but that's what we've been taught, right? So you can go into the Bible and find something that will tell you that what gay people do is a sin, because you want it to say that. But that's, again, going back to the research, right? We can make anything we read say what we want it to say, because our minds are open and willing to accept this, but not that. And so if you're not open to being rewired, restructuring, then diversity is nothing more than another word in the dictionary that means different. That's all that it is. It's just simply a word. But diversity has to be that we are willing to have our wires turned completely upside down, have our beliefs challenged, all of these things. And so I think this is one of these conversations that it's not going to be solved overnight. It's not. what you bring to the environment is you hope people to think differently about how they see each other and the world. And it goes back to kindness and believing in yourself that you can redo anything you've done. So if you are the best diversity person in the world and you wake up one day and all that's just gone out of your mind, that you can go back and get it again. And that's what we must be willing to believe, that whatever it is that we create, we can constantly recreate it. If we cannot, then we fail. And then I'll leave you with this because we're at your time, but I will say this: look at the universe. The universe is the best diversity answer on the planet. It is absolutely, there is no one kind of elephant. There's no one kind of rabbit. There's no one kind of tree, flower, whatever it is. The universe makes multiple copies of it. And just, you know, they move it to this area, they move it to that area, they do, but it still exists in plentiful examples of the same thing, just a little bit different than the original copy.
This is so beautiful, and I really acknowledge you for that. And I've learned a lot, and I actually like where you come from. Believe in yourself, be kind, because fear of losing something is one of the reasons why we don't want to open our tent to other people. But we can do it, and we can build again, even if we fail.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for chatting with me. I will send you a link to this when it's done, and you will let me know if I may upload it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day. I hope your meditation goes well. You know, I might have to come sit on some of those events every once in a while, but I really appreciate this, and I can't wait till you publish your articles. I think they're going to be game changers.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful afternoon. It's still morning here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. Stay well.
You too. God bless. Bye-bye.
Bye.